Jim, over to you.
Thank you, George. George is one of my constituents, so I feel at home here, and along with my fellow alderpersons. I have been an alderman in the 4th District since 2006, and from 2008 to 2010, I also served at the same time as 4th District County Supervisor. That helped me make a lot of connections with people in the county, and I still have a good relationship with the sheriff, with all of the county supervisors, and everyone in county government, from our county executive, Jim Ladwig, all the way down. There's a few things I noticed. I was on Public Works for the county, and there's some things I learned doing that I have talked to our city Public Works Director about. I also know a little bit about Public Works since I worked for the city for 28 years, starting out as a solid waste collector. So I cleaned up the city on a daily basis, and I was in the same neighborhoods every week. Now, I found when I moved to 400 Kiwani Street, which is a former parsonage of the church I grew up in, I found out that there was some cleaning up to do. And I'm still working on that, but I don't have anybody bring me empty gun shells anymore. I think we've made a lot of strides in the 4th District, and I want to continue.
Thank you. Jim, over to you, last minute.
Thank you. Our debt service is divided into short-term and long-term, and I think what's happened with our long-term, we've put almost, in fact, every one of the Public Works street rebuilding in the long term, because we borrow a year ahead and then start paying for it. I would like to have a 1-year stoppage on street repair. Just look at our worst streets, take care of them, and actually change the whole trend of our borrowing. That way we would have more money and we wouldn't have to do the short-term lending we are. Redefining our borrowing as it is and spend as we go with what's available would be a total difference in change. It kind of ties in with the expanding of transportation to the city. That has costs not affordable lead to debt.
Thank you for that. Jim, how would you respond to that type of approach to cutting money?
I appreciated the thinking of giving each department an equal amount to cut, but the difference in city government from private is that there are different things that come up. I maintained the maintenance budget in the solid waste, or the equipment maintenance garage from 1987 to 1992 as the building maintenance person. I did all the cleaning, and I had to order all the cleaning products. I had to order all the oils, all the lubricants, and I noticed that we increased the size of the building, and yet my budget got decreased. So if you have one place, one factor in the city government that's increasing, 2% will definitely straddle them with additional costs. One that's getting smaller, like Parks Department, had been doing all the cutting themselves. So while I respect the concept, I thought it had to be a one-on-one. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we start with you, Jim. Discuss your thoughts on transportation improvements in the city of Racine, both short-term and long-term, in 2 minutes.
Short-term would be the income is up on bus, but the ridership is down because we had to increase the fee to ride the buses, and the cost of fuel has stayed high. We've never been able to sustain a cab service. What we need to do is bid out some type of cab service in bigger towns. Milwaukee just ran into a situation where tomorrow, I believe it is the last day they can turn in their license for cab. If we could get a couple of competing cab services that are more like DART, where maybe it isn't calling, but having something set up. I also think that there was a concept that was out at Wingspread a few years ago about shared rides. And I wasn't in favor of the train, the KRM, because we were going to charge like a quarter of what it was going to cost per passenger, and the rest was going to be made up by people who don't ride the train or by some type of a tax. I was doing some looking at monorail, and if we could run some type of monorail between Milwaukee and Chicago, if Kenosha didn't want to hook us up originally, then why don't we run straight on the tracks that we have where the coal train is, and if we ran a monorail, and as I was searching, I saw that Bombardier has a company that manufactures monorails, and we have Bombardier company right in Racine County. So I think there's a lot of different things. The thing that scares me is costs are not affordable, and they lead to debt, and that's what we're trying to get away from.
Thank you. Jim, finish up with you. 1 minute.
I voted, this is a phrase you've heard on a national level, I voted against it before I voted for it. But the reason I changed, when I first voted against it, I thought we could take that money and we could turn it over and pay off some of our debt or use it towards the budget. But when I found out that it was part of the plan that was set up even before I was elected to keep a 1930s artisan construction building such as the courthouse in tip-top shape and actually make something viable for the next decades to come that was built after the Depression. We have several classic buildings in Racine, and if you look at the 2 floors that were done, you saw that you can't tell where doors were. And it's been much more efficient, and we've combined some departments, and we also eliminated positions for right now. So it's, as a remodel of something in the historic district, I think it fit in there.
Thank you for that. Jim, over to you for 1 minute.
Thank you. I like analogies, and I compare the present health plan, which I benefited with for 28 years while I was an employee, and now as a retiree, I'm still benefiting. I compare that to a health care plan, like comparing a buffet to ordering off the menu. You pay one thing on insurance, where when you have a health care plan, you can pick and choose what you need most. And my wife has a situation like that where she works for Wheaton Franciscan Healthcare, and to come in every day and build up your sick days, you actually store time in case something serious would happen. I remember having an attitude that, well, I get 12 sick days a year, so I can take them. That attitude is bred with insurance, but with a healthcare savings plan, it makes you more accountable.
All right, on to the next question, and we start with you, Jim. And this one is the mayor and... Let me get the right one. Here it is. What do you feel you could do as an alderman regarding the job situation in Racine?
Well, I guess I could keep doing what I have been doing. I've contacted numerous companies to come in. I've still been working with Walmart. The buildings that were Porter's on Superior Street and on Huron, and the building that used to be Green Manufacturing, I figured if all of those were torn down, that would be a perfect spot for a grocery store. I contacted warehouse food stores in Illinois, Indiana, and finally I contacted Walmart. I've been contacting Woodman's. I mean, you've got all the boaters, you'd have natural employees in the neighborhood. They say, well, there's not enough room for parking. I said, you've got so many people that would walk to that neighborhood. The voters would not bring food from Illinois. They'd purchase it right here. I have worked with Dole Corporation. I know the vice president of sales. And we tried to get Dole Corporation to build a cryo plant on Memorial Drive where the foundries were, because there's water credits there. They can purchase water at a lower rate than everywhere else. I've talked to bottling companies to try to get Racine water bottled. I have probably contacted the Disney Corporation to build a very small world, a domed entertainment center down where, I guess we call it the Harbor View now, but it was the Walker site, because there were 20 acres originally there, and I found out that some other major acreage in that area is for sale. That would bring people that want a vacation in a summer atmosphere. If they domed it and built it all in, we'd have 12 months a year, 365 days, 366 every 4.
Thank you. Jim, over to you, finish up.
I voted for it this past time, but I never will again. What we got for that $5 was 2 seasonal employees in DPW who would be mandated that they get a Class A license, CDL. If they weren't hired full-time, they would be trained CDL drivers, and it was an investment by all of Racine. If you look in the newspaper, if you look online, it's CDLA, CDLA, CDLA. There are so many job opportunities. It would be hiring probably younger people who are starting with families. But we have to remember, recycling was a state-mandated program by a previous administration that couldn't continue to fund us with it. So now we're stuck with something that we have to come up with. If, I guess within the last 15 seconds, wait until we stop printing $85 billion a month, and then let's watch how many people start recycling. This is going to change the whole world's economy.
And we got him on the record, folks. He said he will never vote for it again.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you. Jim, over to you for 1 minute.
If you look at all of the retirement systems by other states, Wisconsin's is the healthiest. The Wisconsin retirement system. I receive my retirement from them. I remember in the early 80s, we brought in a deferred comp. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, if we are having a retirement system, but we have enough money that we can fund a separate one on our own, I think we should be funding our own. And I could never figure out why the employer paid both the employer and the employee portion. Was not going to make any friends with my fellow employees who are still working for the city. But I think if you want to plan your future, there's a way to take the burden off of the city and yet keep WRS healthy, because WRS employs a lot of people, and also the people that stay in this area spend the money back into the system. But I think we need to look at employees paying a larger portion as we go along and keep the system healthy.
Thank you. All right, the next one for you, Jim. This is a good one for you. You've got the most tenure of anybody up here. Part of means of balancing the state budget a while back was to reduce the shared revenues of municipalities. Was that a justifiable reduction, and how's it working out?
Well, apparently it's going to work out real well.
But how's it working out for the municipality, the city of Racine?
It's not working out very well for the municipality, but apparently the plans are in Madison that it's going to work out well for the taxpayers and the voters, that we're each going to get a few dollars back. I would really like to see, and you're going to like this being the individual you are, that we should collect the taxes and maintain our community. And the federal and state should say, hey, we need some money, can you send us some? I think where the money is collected is where it should stay. We should fund the things we need to do with accountability, not add all kinds of frivolous things onto it, but I think we should be able to fund what's necessary for this city and any municipality to thrive. And the state should actually come to us and say, well, you know, we really need this money for this. And the federal should, the way the government, small central government is the way this country was set up, and states' rights. And it's just completely turned on it's turned over. Now the federal government has all the power. They want our money, and then they send us back, they send it back to the community through the state. The state takes a portion of it, and then we never get back what we really need. If money is collected from taxpayers in a municipality, they should get their bang for the buck. They shouldn't have to beg for money back.
Thank you. Finish up with you, Jim. City Administrator.
I had entertained the thought of when our current administrator retires, either we have another administrator and a part-time mayor, as we're part-time on the council, and hopefully get someone that's just out of school, that's a city planner, that has some ideas and concepts on how you build on, here's another analogy, like if you have a tooth pull, you can either have a bridge or a temporary partial, or you can actually have an implant. And people say we're locked in and we're bound by the borders of our cities, townships, and villages, but we should start building our infrastructure. And I think, if I remember right, there was a position taken out of the Office of Human Resources when we hired an administrator, and he's the one that worked on all the budgets. So I'm still thinking part-time mayor, full-time administrator.
All right, Jim, the last question goes to you. Another financial question. The mayor and common council have borrowed money in order to get around the state mandated tax cap, and so able to increase it. Let me reword that. Get around the state mandated tax cap and tax increase cap. All right? They borrowed money to get around that. How's that working? Is that causing some pushing up of the debt? Or is this working out all right? Is it legitimate, this particular process?
It worked for the 2 years that we did it, but it can't work again because it'll drop our reserves down to a point where it'll affect our borrowing rate. And the borrowing we've done is at between 1% and 2%, and so we've gotten quite a bang for the buck. But we can't continue to do that. What we need to do is, we're going to have at least a 1-year moratorium somehow on spending, and we can't completely defund everything, but I think we have to look very closely at this upcoming budget, and there are still a few things that are, what would you call them, extras that we could look at. The whole thing is we need a holiday on spending somewhere. We definitely need, we have to find a way. We're cut down to the basics. There were over 300 employees in Local 67 when I started in 75, and they're down to not too many, over 100 now. So the city has done its work. It's just that the global and our national budgets have not helped municipalities at all. It reminds me, here's another analogy, Mo would hit Larry, Larry would hit Curly. We're Curly. We turn to hit somebody and there's no one there to hit. I think what this redirection from the state level and the federal level has forced us to do the majority of the work. And my grandpa used to say, we're just the guys that can do it. So I think we're going to have to hit the road.
Okay, thank you very much. We're done with the question and answer period now. I'm going to give each candidate a minute and a half to give some closing remarks. And in our typical tradition, we're going to do it in the reverse order, just to kind of unwind everybody. Start with you, Jim.
Oh, okay. I appreciate everyone attending, but this is a typical problem with Racine. I mean, you've had this news out that we were doing this, and I appreciate all of you who have come here from the media and taxpayers. But this is the biggest problem in this community. A lot of things are out of our hands. I want to compare it to a farmer who's going out to buy a field. The farmer's going to go and he's going to purchase the most fertile field that he can find because he wants his crops to increase his investment. He wants to get something out of it. If our schools, if the parents, the teachers are doing fine. I mentored over at Jane's school. I see what they have to put up with, some of the kids that come. They're not prepared at all to study. They're having a good time and they're not thinking of the future. But like Alderman Perez said, there are close to 1,200 jobs if you go on to workforce development, but there aren't people with the education to fill them. I still maintain that if our schools had a high grade point average, if we were turning out unbelievable geniuses, companies would flock here. I mean, that's the whole thing that's lacking. People go, if you're going to invest $6 million in something, you're not going to go where it's going to piddle away.
Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to get this out on the internet. People are going to be able to hear these people. And I want to especially thank the candidates for appearing and answering these questions. Very good, very well done. We rest adjourned.
Yeah, I'll go with, I'll go have a beer.
You don't
like
I don't know, who gets all the papers and pens?
I don't know.
wanna steal your guys'
Hand them out.
I don't wanna